We saw the lowest number of daily COVID cases since December, and we are wondering now, is this reaping the rewards of, I suppose, the restrictions that have been in place? Is this a vaccine bounce, or is it a combination of both? And for more on this, I'm joined by Dr. Elizabeth Ryan, who's a lecturer in immunology at the University of Limerick. Good morning, Elizabeth. Thank you for speaking to us. Those low case numbers, in your view, is it the vaccine bounce? The vaccines look like they've been more effective than we could ever have hoped for, which is a wonderful thing. Or is it just the long, hard slog for over 100 days of, I suppose, the general public mostly adhering to restrictions?
It's both. The restrictions really play a huge role in this. And one way you can see that is this winter there's been very little flu. And that's as a result, that flu
Yeah.
usually spreads in a similar way to COVID. And because of the restrictions, we've suppressed flu. So COVID is just a bit more contagious and a bit harder to suppress.
Yeah, and a little bit more,
But
more lethal.
and a little bit more lethal. Well, flu can be quite lethal too in certain people. Um, but so it's both. And now 1 million doses of vaccines have been given to
Yeah.
the population, which is a huge number in such a short. I mean, I know there's difficulties with all the rollout and everything, but take a step back and think about that. That's a vaccine that didn't exist,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you
such
can
a
look at the
short time
vaccines
ago.
as the glass being half empty or full, but it probably is more on the full side of things.
Yeah.
What I was asking you about the restrictions and indeed the vaccine, the potential vaccine bounce, is it's only a couple of short weeks since the cases were inching back into the 700s and maybe moving towards, we were worried
Yes.
about the
Yeah.
800s, and we were also, I suppose, concerned that there was a fourth wave. I mean, that was certainly being discussed and touted as a possibility, and NEFIT we're nervous, I think it's fair to say. What I'm wondering is what's happened in the last 3 weeks that has changed that, because I don't see us tightening up as a society in terms of our restrictions and our adherence to them. I think we've soldiered on. Most people do stick to them. Some people don't stick to them, but that's
Yeah.
probably relatively similar now as it was when we were on the 700 cases. Was it just we needed more time, or is it that the vaccine bounce is the game changer?
Well, it's the vaccines, but it's also testing and really trying to root out those asymptomatic cases. So having like these pop-up test centers where people who don't have the symptoms are being tested, that's a really important contribution as well, because that's another way you can
Yeah.
break those chains of transmission of the disease. Because the way it spreads is not by people who are symptomatic, because you go and get tested and you isolate, hopefully, but it's by the fact that so many people can have the virus and not realize.
And
So it's increasing testing within
yeah,
asymptomatic people will
the
also
pop
help.
ups, the
Yeah,
I suppose
yeah.
the more high tech level of intervention. Can I ask you? There's a couple of things in the papers this morning, Elizabeth, about vaccination and what could or should happen. One of the stories is to do with NIAC likely to bring in new curbs on AstraZeneca. I suppose this is in light of the cerebral thrombosis that has been associated as a rare complication, and the fact that perhaps the UK, for example, have brought in restrictions on using it in the under 30s. Will that, do you think, happen? Do you think that we will see more restrictions? And is that a good thing in effect? But also, if it slows down our vaccination programme, does that need to be taken into account here?
I think that it's a good thing. I think the evidence coming from, as we're learning more and more about the vaccines and their side effects and how they work, we have to use that knowledge and use the vaccines that we have in the best way possible. So just to kind of keep continuously refining the road, who gets which vaccine as the information becomes available.
Okay.
I think that's really sensible, and we're having more vaccines come on stream over the next few months. More like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine will be coming
Yeah.
available, which there's just a few more options, and you have to learn from the data. And as more and more people are getting the vaccine, doctors will learn more about those rare side
Yeah.
effects
The,
and how best to you know make sure that the right people get the right vaccine.